Hello, welcome back. I'm John. I'm sat with James. James is doing the work on Corrick. We are just about to get going on the actual wiring of the boat. Now, we had to make a few decisions up front in terms of the batteries and so forth, and so this is just before we go into the wiring. We're just going to double back and make sure that all of what we were thinking about at the time that we made those decisions still makes sense.
Yeah.
First thing we did was James was always saying to me, how are you going to sail the boat, how are you going to use the boat, what's it going to be used for, and it's definitely going to be reasonably long journeys, but not terribly often far outside of land, but I'm expecting to spend a bit of time off grid.
Do a few holidays.
At anchor.
Yeah, a couple of weeks here and there, or however. Yeah.
So we sat down and said, what are we going to have on this boat? And there are questions like, are we going to have a windlass or not, and things like that. But the list we ended up with, and probably in the order of the draw that they might take on the electrical system, is bilge pump, autopilot, water system,
so water pump,
fridge, heater. And then as you go down the lower end of things, but pretty important, nav lights, the nav system, probably the lowest priority and the lowest draw, the internal lighting system. So with that in mind, and we could have done the calculations in gruesome detail, but what we then decided was we needed to choose what battery technology we were going to use, and I think there were three main options, wasn't there?
So the standard option would be a sealed lead acid battery, which is what we've gone for. The next stage up from there is an AGM battery, which is a gel battery, and the next stage on from there is down like a lithium battery route, which is far too complicated and expensive for most things at the moment. So we've chosen to go down to the sealed lead acid route, which is my preferred route for this type of use of boat, and they are basically very resilient and they are much cheaper battery.
And because we recognised the need to have some capacity, we could have gone with two, one for the engine and one for domestic, but actually we've gone for three and kept the three batteries the same so that they are interchangeable.
Yes, so the three batteries are dual purpose sealed lead acid batteries. They're all 70 amp hours, so they're exactly the same. The three are the same cells. The domestic bank is then a bank of two, which from your charging side and being able to input charge, it makes the bank, it kind of protects the batteries to be in amongst a bank of more than one, and then so your charging system effectively is charging a bank of three from your your mains battery charger. So it makes the whole system a little bit more robust.
And that should do us, but absolutely we did think about, should we be using the sort of green energy thing? We had a long conversation ages and ages ago about whether we were going to go wind or solar, and it was a pretty one-sided conversation, bearing in mind what we're going to try and do. Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of the wind energy side. It's very good, but they are noisy, they're high maintenance. You end up with basically a wind turbine permanently mounted onto the back of the boat.
I certainly remember doing a trip where we went downwind a long way, and at that point the wind thing didn't help us very much at all.
You're not getting anything. You're not getting anything if you're stuck in a high pressure for a couple of weeks. So the solar power side of it, the solar electric stuff has come along in the last 5-10 years, has come along hugely, and the modern solar panels for this type of boat and this type of sailing, modern solar panels will do everything you need them to do, and they are just hugely versatile.
And so I guess in summary, and before Billy starts doing the wiring, we've got 3 sets of batteries, obviously the engine alternator going straight onto the engine start, as is pretty standard, but also the solar input always going into the domestic.
Yeah,
And
solar panels will be run through a solar regulator, which will come with most panels. So if you buy a solar panel, it has to be regulated somehow. So you can buy panels with regulators built in, or you can have a regulator that you fit into the boat, which is fairly standard. So that basically has a battery protection circuit in it, really, so it doesn't overcharge your batteries.
Yeah, and that will be there and actually should work the automatic bilge pump, which is at the base of the mast, which we didn't mention right at the beginning.
You didn't mention, yeah. So there is that smaller bilge pump there.
Yeah.
So that will be enough to keep that maintenance pump running and just keep the mast water out and keep it dry if there is any.
And so that should be there. And if push comes to shove, and we need to parallel this all up, there will be a switch that allows us to put everything onto the engine start.
Yes, exactly. So our favourite way of doing it is we fit a 3-position isolator switch. So you have the switch can be off, so all the batteries are isolated. You turn it to the first position, and that turns the boat on, and that allows the all domestics to be turned on. It also turns the engine battery on, and then you turn it to the third position, and that will parallel the engine and the domestic batteries together. So if you ever have a problem with your engine battery going flat, you can then start it off of your domestic batteries, which then ties back into why we have 3 batteries, which are dual purpose. So all your domestic batteries and your engine batteries have a suitable CCA rating to be able to turn the engine over and get it all running.
Yeah, good. So we're happy with where we are. We can let Bill get on with the wiring.
Yes. Yeah.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the updates.
So Wayne, the engineer, has been down and has lined up the engine, and as a part of that he's checked the prop shaft, and he's had the propeller off and had a bit of a look at it. And when he had the propeller off and looked at it, he tells us, and we probably should have recognised this, but it's a left-handed propeller, and we've got a engine that isn't going to work with that. So this propeller blade is going to have to come off, and we'll replace it like for like. I've got an option to go for a much more expensive, complicated propeller, and I do worry a bit that this one's going to be under-propped, but I think I'll live with that for at least the first year. Another thing that happened in this week was we got a couple of parcels in the post from Jeremy Rogers. This includes the bolts that will be part of the rigging. It also includes this fitting here, which will hold the transducer, and we also have here the cranked stanchions that will go in just about where the primary winches go, and we'll talk about that when we start to install them, because that'll make a bit more sense. But very pleased to see this, and that can all start going in this week or next.
So we've been looking at materials to get. We thought this looked quite seasidey, but the pattern's a bit too deep.
So we decided that would be quite nice. It's unusual. I love the colour and the design, but I think again the pattern was probably a little bit too big. So we have decided. I wanted this one. I thought it was really rather bright, but John wants to still continue with the blue theme, so we're going to go for the stripe and make cushions out of that one. How unusual. It has boats and anchors on. So the company we've decided to go for is G Studio, Land and Sea.